Namaste and good morning, everyone.
Namaste ji.
Do some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhurбhavасвah Tatsavitra Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Satyamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityurma Amritam Gamya Om Senavavatu Senabhunatu Saviryam Karvavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidveshavai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's open our Uddhava Gita books. We are on chapter 14 and we are going to start with the verse number 9. And the title of this chapter is Pure Devotional Services Surpasses Knowledge and Detachment. So, because whether it's a Vairagya or whether it's a Jnana, all of those qualities we need to cultivate for Bhakti, love for God. So that's why he says pure devotional service surpasses knowledge and detachment. So knowledge and detachment, those are the means to attain the Bhakti. Okay. So let's see what he's saying in verse number 9. Tavat karmani kurvit na nirvidyet yavatah mat katha shravan adyo vashradha yavanan jayate. Until one develops detachment from fruitive activities, knowing them to be the source of all miseries, and as long as a taste for hearing and chanting my glories has not awakened, one must act according to the regulative principles prescribed by the Vedic literature. Those who are overly attached to a materialistic way of life are naturally suited for following the path of fruitive activities or karam, or it could be a sakam karam. How long such persons will continue on this path and what will prompt them to accept the paths of Gyan and Bhakti is being described in this verse. One should continue to execute the Vedic injunctions with regards to the performance of one's occupational duties as long as one is not disgusted with the materialistic life. Gradually, by the performance of Karam Yoga, one's heart will be cleansed of the desire to enjoy the fruit of one's labor. When detachment arises within the heart, one becomes eligible for accepting the path of Jnana Yoga. In whatever condition of life one finds himself in, if one becomes spontaneously attracted to hearing about the Supreme Lord as a result of receiving the mercy of a pure devotee, he can accept the path of devotional service, knowing that all kinds of responsibilities and debts are liquidated as promised by the Lord himself. Such a person has firm faith that simply by hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, the perfection of life can be achieved, and not by any other process. Such a firm conviction can be attained only by the association of pure devotees of the Lord. The Shruti and Samriti consists of the orders of the Lord. Therefore, anyone who transgresses these orders must be considered to be envious of the Supreme Lord, even though he may claim to be a devotee. However, for the service of the Lord, a devotee may sometimes transgress the Vedic injunctions, and for this there is no fault. It is the opinion of some commentators that one who has not received the mercy of a pure devotee and who has not developed firm faith in the discussions of the Lord's grace can also engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, giving up all engagement in fruitive activities. By following the example of another Vaishnava, the injunctions of the scriptures ultimately guide one to the platform of devotional service to the Lord, transcending the rules and regulations governing Varnashram Dharma. It is for this reason that the Lord has ordered, give up all varieties of religion and simply surrender unto me. If someone thinks I am a pure devotee, and so there is no need for me to follow any of the rules and regulations of the scriptures, and thus does not observe the vow of Ekadashi, offers yogurt and milk to the Lord in a copper pot, offers coconut water in a bell metal cup, or eats food that was not first offered to the Lord, he transgresses the Lord's orders propounded in the scriptures and thus commits offenses. There are many unalloyed devotees who appear to perform fruitive activities by the request of materialistic persons. However, such activities are performed without any attachment and thus do not produce any fruitive result. The Supreme Lord has stated in the Bhagavad Gita that anything done as a sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme O Son of Prith is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. So without faith doesn't have any merit to it. Those who are determined to enjoy sense gratification at all costs are incapable of dissociating themselves from the desire to enjoy the fruit of their karma. Such persons generally show very little interest in hearing the topics of the Supreme Lord. After a great deal of material enjoyment, if one becomes disgusted and thus assumes a mood of indifference and is fortunate enough to hear the topics of the Supreme Lord from a pure devotee, his desire for sense gratification can be curbed as they engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Without developing a spontaneous attraction for hearing the topics of the Supreme Lord, one's desire for enjoying the fruit of his activities or liberation from such entanglement can never diminish. The only means for becoming detached from all material desires is to develop the inclination for engagement in the service of the Supreme Lord. So what we need to do is keep on pouring the love for God. We'll see that the desires to enjoy the material life, it will pour out of our mind. That's an easy way of doing it. Just to fill your heart and mind with the devotion. Verse number 10. Swadharmaha satho yajana yajair anashi kam uddhava na yati swarag narkau yadyanyan na samacharet. My dear Uddhava, one who executes his occupational duties and worships the Lord by the performance of sacrifice, while not desiring to enjoy the fruitive results, and who avoids forbidden activities, will not have to spend time in the heavenly or hellish planet. Because we want to rise above the heaven also. Definitely we don't want to go to hell, but heaven also. So he says this is the way to do it. Materialists who are attached to the fruits of their work attain either heaven or hell as a result of their fruitive activities. However, one who has no desire to enjoy the fruits of his karma, while executing his occupational duties according to the Vedic injunctions, and does not engage in prohibited activities, will neither go to the heavenly planets to enjoy celestial sense gratification, nor go to hellish planets for punishment. The living entities go to hell as a result of being under the control of material desires, which force them to engage in illicit activities. The thirst for performing pious activities, such as fire sacrifices, to enjoy the results will carry the living entities to heaven. However, those who have no desire to enjoy the fruits of their karma will not enjoy heavenly life nor suffer hellish conditions. Okay? Because otherwise, whether it's a hell or a heaven, what are those? Sure, they are the bondages, chains. In heaven, the chain is made out of gold. In hell, the chain is made out of thorns. So, nonetheless, they are the chains, the bondages. So, Lord Krishna is trying to tell us that, hey, walk on the path where you come to me, neither to hell nor to heaven. Verse number 11. अस्मिहि लोके वर्तमानः स्वधर्मस्थो अनघाशुचि ज्ञानं विशुद्धम् आपनोति मद्भक्तिं वा यदृच्छ्यः. Those who are fixed in their occupational duties, who have renounced sinful activities, and who have become detached from the desire to enjoy the fruit of their labor, even in this life, attain transcendental knowledge. Or if fortunate, devotional service unto me. One may question, what do karmis gain? To answer this, Shri Krishna says, as a consequence of performing activities without the desire to enjoy the result, one's heart becomes purified in this very lifetime, so that he can imbibe transcendental knowledge. If he somehow or other gets the association of a pure devotee, he can come to the platform of pure devotional service, which includes liberation from material existence. So it's just like you're a karma yogi, but at the same time, you're in the company of a pure devotee. The effect of that pure devotee will come on us too. One who engages in devotional service mixed with karma or jnana can attain the platform of Shantarati, but not the higher relationships in love of God. Those who are fortunate are not prone to engage in sinful activities, being in a state of purified consciousness. When one factually understands his relationship with the Supreme Lord, he becomes fixed in his constitutional position of eternally engaging in the service of the Lord. So sinful activities won't happen because there is a more and more purification of the heart. Verse number 12. Swarginoho api etam ichanti lokam nirnayastatha sadhakam jnana bhakti bhyam ubhyam tad sadhakam. The inhabitants of both the hellish and heavenly planets pray to be born in the human form of life on earth, which facilitates the cultivation of transcendental knowledge and devotional service, as opposed to hellish or heavenly existence, which does not provide such a facility. So that's how important this human body is. So the beings in the hell or heaven, they pray that we go back to a human existence so that we can make a difference. In the next 6 verses, the Lord glorifies the human form of life, which can award one liberation. So liberation can happen only through a human body. As well as loving devotional service, it's not possible for the inhabitants of hell and heaven to cultivate spiritual knowledge or execute devotional service because of their absorption in material pleasure and pain. The conditioned souls become so much absorbed in the happiness of material enjoyment in heaven that they get no opportunity to learn anything about devotional service, which is the only way to achieve supreme auspiciousness. The conditioned souls also do not get any opportunity to perform devotional service in the hellish condition because of being put into excessive pains. That is why the demigods in the heaven and the suffering living entities in hell pray to receive the human form of life on the earth planet. One can awaken one's constitutional position only in the human form of life, and he can also realize the essential characteristics of devotional service, which is his constitutional propensity. There is no possibility of cultivating sadhana bhakti either in heaven or in hell. Therefore, the bodies of the inhabitants of heaven and hell make them unfit for the cultivation of devotional service. So, this human form has been given to us, which is so precious, to cultivate more love for God. Verse number 13. Na naraha swargatim कांगेन नारकेम वा विचक्षणः नेमम लोकम च कांक्षेत देह अवशेषात प्रमाद्यति. One who is intelligent should not desire promotion to the heavenly planets, nor residence in hell. One should also never become complacent, being satisfied with his human existence, because by such absorption in the bodily conception of life, one fails to attain his own self-interest. One who is actually wise, after receiving the rare human form of life, should not engage in either pious or sinful activities that will ultimately lead him to heavenly or hellish conditions of life. So that means no desire for heaven, doing good, but no desire for the fruits. And definitely not doing negative karmas, weak karma, because we don't want to go down, which is called hell. One should also not desire to remain comfortable in this earth. So we should not get attached to this earthly life either. Because sometimes we think that, yeah, earth, that's fine. There are some good times, some bad times, but it's all right. It's almost like a person who is in a prison says, hey, I'm getting food. I have a place to stay, even though it's confined, but it's all right. This is like a prison, the earth. After all, if one is too attached to his material body, it will be very difficult for him to remain fixed in devotional service. So we got to rise above all this. An intelligent devotee desires neither heavenly pleasure nor hellish suffering. Even though he may enact the pastime of possessing a gross and subtle body and travel to various planets, he is not contaminated by material desire. Again and again, he is telling us this material desire, this maya, is a contamination. Contamination, it's a maya. Verse number 14. एतत् विद्वान् पुरामृत्योर अभवाय घटेत स अप्रमत idam ज्ञात्वा मर्त्यम अपि अर्थ सिद्धिदम. Although this human body can award one liberation from material existence, one should know that it is still subject to death. So that means it's very rare to have a human body, but it's not permanent. We know that anybody who has been born will die. Okay? So although this human body can award one liberation from material existence, one should know that it is still subject to death. Therefore, one should sincerely endeavor for attaining the perfection of life before death arrives. So death is assured for this human body, but at the same time, we don't know how soon the death can come. So we got to use every moment we are in this body to achieve higher and higher love for God. That's why we have gotten this body. The human body is a great asset because it can award one the ultimate goal of life. Knowing this perfectly well, one who is learned should relentlessly try to liberate himself from material existence before the end of life. Should always remember this. So just like a student going to college or school knows why I'm there. I need to get a diploma. I'm learning and getting a diploma. The same thing we should always keep in mind. This human life has been given to us. Only God knows after how many different kinds of lives we have been gone through. So now, right now, we are in this very precious human life. We have to make a difference, rise above. Although the human form of body can award one the ultimate perfection of life, it is perishable just like any other body. Because the human form of body helps one attain the supreme destination, an intelligent person invites his own auspiciousness by renouncing the spirit of material enjoyment before reaching the end of life. Okay, so that means let's move up a little before we take our last breath. Verse number 15. Shidyamanam yamer ete krit needam vanaspatim khagaha swaketam utsrijye kshemam yatihi alampataha. It is seen that a bird sometimes is forced to leave the tree where it had made its nest when the tree is cut down by heartless men who thus resemble Yamraj. So for a bird, the man who's cutting the tree where they have made the nest is like a Yamraj, Lord of Death. The Lord of Death. Still being unattached, the bird can find happiness somewhere else. Being unattached. If the bird is attached to the nest which he made, will definitely get banished. But if he is unattached, he can again make the nest somewhere else. The Lord herein gives a practical example of how one can give up attachment for his material body. See, just like for that bird, it's a nest. For us, this body is a nest too. We are residing in this body right now. We are not the body, we are residing in the body. It's our duty to take care of this body. The bird may live happily in its nest, but when it sees that the tree is being cut by some people who are as cruel as Yamraj, it leaves the nest without remorse. In the same way, one should not become attached to the tree of the material body. Okay? According to our own karmas, we will have another nest, another body. We should have faith in that. Verse number 16. Aho ratris chidyamanam budhyayuh bhai veputhu mukta sangaha param buddhva nirihi upashamyati. Realizing that one's duration of life is also being cut down by each passing day and night, one should become detached and very afraid of material existence. Afraid over here means not get attached to it. Anything we are afraid, we are not attached. So each passing day and night, detachment should become more and more. By endeavoring to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will achieve perfect peace. See, perfect peace will come only where it resides. And it resides only in God, not in the material objects. We have just fooled ourselves. We think that more we have, the more peace we'll have. No. This Maya can never give us the peace because it doesn't have it. The thing can give only what the thing has. So peace comes from only God. Knowing that the days and nights are taking away his duration of life, a sober person acts in such a way that he ultimately obtains peace and eternal residence in the Lord's abode. An intelligent devotee of the Lord realizes that his duration of life is decreasing with each passing of the day and night, and thus he acts for his own welfare. By giving up attachment to the objects of the senses, just as a bird may leave its nest and go to another tree without attachment, a devotee can live anywhere, knowing that there is no permanent residence within the material world. Instead of working hard to improve his situation more comfortable within the temporary material existence, a devotee dedicates himself to going back home, back to Godhead, where life is eternal. It is only in the spiritual world where there is no influence of the three modes of material nature that one can attain everlasting peace. So in this material nature, in the Prakriti, there's always ups and downs. Change is always there. Constancy, consistency, peace is only beyond the Maya, beyond the Prakriti. Verse number 17. Nri deham adyam sulabham sudurlabham palavam sukalpam guru karanadharam maya anukulena na basvetritam puman bhavat bhav avdim nataret sa atama. The human form of life, although very rarely achieved, is automatically awarded to the conditioned soul by the laws of nature. So that means the karam phal. Karam phal. So our own karam phals brought us into this human form. Even though the giver of the karam phal is God, because he is the one who has created this law. But our karam, the human body can be compared to a boat having the spiritual master as the expert helmsman and my instructions as the favorable breezes. One who does not utilize his human birth for crossing over the ocean of material existence is certainly a killer of his own soul. Atma, अपने आप को ही मारने वाला. If we don't use something which, for what purpose it's supposed to be used, so we are killing it. Alas, one who is unfortunate may unexpectedly receive a touchstone, but then throw it away. Touchstone. So there is a gem which you touch something, it becomes gold. That's a touchstone. Paras money. That's what he's talking about. And if somebody has that Paras money and throws it away, he says that's an unfortunate man. This principle is being explained herein. This human form of a body is like a touchstone that can fulfill all desires. Human life is obtained after going through many millions of births and deaths. Only out of good fortune does a living entity receive the human form of life. So this is called a very durlabh, very rare. The human body is compared to a palav or boat, and the spiritual master is the helmsman who can expertly take one across the ocean of material existence. So it's like a boatman, ferryman. The instructions of the all-merciful Supreme Personality of Godhead are compared to favorable breezes. And by accepting them, one can quickly cross to the other side of the material existence. This principle is also applicable to the Jnanis. So this life is called we are in a bhavsagar, like an ocean, and we have to cross it. The human form of body is the only vehicle for a living entity to attain the ultimate goal of life. After many births and deaths, one who is fortunate attains the human form of life. The spiritual master, who is expert in the cultivation of God consciousness, acts as the boatman to take one across the ocean of material existence. The favorable wind in the form of the Lord's mercy guides the boat of the human body as he traverses the path of perfection. One who does not know that this body is a boat, the spiritual master a boatman, and the Lord's instruction of favorable wind certainly invites his own ruination by becoming the killer of his soul. Okay, so this is not in the absolute sense killer of the soul. You are not really, soul can never be killed, but we are really, if we are going downward, we are really killing ourselves, killing this opportunity to rise up. Verse number 18. Yada arambheshu nirvanano viraktaha sanyatindriya abhyano anatmanaho yogi dharyet achalam mana. When a yogi becomes disgusted and hopeless after many endeavors for material happiness, and thus completely controls his senses and develops a mood of detachment, he should fix the mind in transcendence without deviation. After glorifying the human form of body, which awards one's real self-interest, the Lord next describes the nature of a person who is qualified to cultivate Jnana. In this and the following verses, one naturally becomes full of anxiety as a result of experiencing the distress that is born of material activities. If he receives the good instructions of the Lord or his devotees, he can develop a mood of detachment. The mind of a conditioned soul is always restless and eager to direct the senses toward their object. When one develops detachment from material enjoyment, which simply awards various miseries as a result of his own experience, he will naturally want to control his senses so that his mind will gradually become peaceful. By cultivating Krishna consciousness, one realizes his constitutional position and thus surpasses the platform of temporary material enjoyment as his heart becomes completely purified. Verse number 19. Dharyamanam manoyahir brahmyad ashv navstitam atendritoho anurodhen margenatma vashamnayet. When one is endeavoring to free himself from material existence, the restless mind should always be brought back under control by adhering to one's prescribed path. So mind is always restless, but we need to control it. So when one first tries to control his mind, it can be very difficult due to past bad habits. Because we have never tried to control the mind. So mind doesn't want to be controlled. So it will resist. The mind may become twice as restless when one tries to restrict it from material enjoyment. The urge for material enjoyment is so strong that the mind easily becomes carried away by such thoughts. In such a situation, one should control the mind by allowing it to have a little gratification in a way that is not contrary to religious principles. So that's why we see that in the temples, beautiful forms, tasting prasad, very beautiful scent of the incense, the light. So mind gets attracted there. The senses want all that. So we are telling the senses and the mind, this is the place you are going to find all that. And ultimately rise above it and find the giver of all that too. Because the conditioned soul has a natural tendency to enjoy sense gratification, it is inevitable that his mind will become restless when controlled. The best thing is to divert the functions of the mind from one's personal sense enjoyment to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead while following the regulative principles. In this way, if one cultivates Krishna consciousness, his mind will automatically be controlled. So if you keep on practicing like this, before you know, the mind is under your control completely. Verse number 20. Manogatim na visrijej jit prano jitendriya satav sampanyah bhutya man atam vasham nayet. One should never allow the mind to go outside the quest for spiritual advancement. One should control the mind by engaging the senses and life here in activities of goodness as directed by one's good intelligence. So not just only the senses, but the prana also. Although the tendency of the mind is to wander here and there, one must always bring it back to the practice of self-realization by means of one's steady intelligence. Okay, so buddhi. Buddhi should control the mind. Mind will like to go here and there. Use your buddhi, the higher power in you, to bring the mind back. If the mind is always engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, it will be restrained from thoughts of sense gratification. Because it is being gratified by the highest. Why would we go anywhere else? The mind is naturally attached to the objects of the senses. So unless one is careful to control the mind, advancement on the path of self-realization will be hampered. Even after temporarily controlling the urges of the mind, those whose senses are not under control can easily fall down from the path of self-realization. For this reason, the mind and senses should always be engaged in the service of the all auspicious Supreme Lord. When one comes to the platform of self realization, the restless mind will no longer create obstacles but help one. The mind is material, and so it always hankers after the objects of the senses. So, what does it mean? Mind is material. Because mind is also part of the Prakriti. Okay, it's part of the material nature. So the mind is material, and so it always hankers after the objects of the senses. So it's natural for the mind to go after the objects of the senses and is averse to the real self interest of the Supreme Soul. There is no possibility of achieving self realization without controlling the restless mind. Okay, if you think that no, we're gonna just let the mind do whatever it does, but I am going to achieve godhood, it's not gonna happen. Just a wishful thinking only. So this self-control, control of the mind is very, very important. And the sooner we do it, the faster we'll reach towards our ultimate goal. And another thing is this mind is the one we'll be born again with. Body will be different. The mind is the same. So that's why it's better to work on the mind more. Body is perishable. Mind will perish only when Atma becomes completely one with the Paramatma. Before that, there's a mind. Mind is taking us. Okay? Let's do one more and then we'll stop. So verse number 21. Esh ve parmoho yogoho manasaha sangraha samrita hirde yagyetvam anivachan damne setvarvato muhu. One who is expert in training wild horses will first allow a horse some freedom. Then by pulling the reins, he will gradually control the horse. Similarly, one cannot immediately bring the mind under complete control. It must be gradually trained so that it eventually sticks to the path of yoga. See, even in the Hatha Yoga class, what are we doing? We are gradually in control of our mind. We are telling the mind while we are working on our body, concentrate on this spot, concentrate on that spot, concentrate on the prana. So we are gradually, while doing something else, controlling our mind. Shri Krishna is herein citing the example of training a horse to show how one must check the urges of the mind. One must sometimes fulfill the demands of the mind in order to control it completely. To control the mind is the main purpose of the yoga system. One who wants to control his senses should study this example given by Lord Krishna. A horseman, although wanting to gain full control of the horse, will in the beginning let the horse have his way for a short while. Even while doing so, he continues to hold the rope and never allows it to run completely wild. If the mind which runs towards material enjoyment like a horse comes to know that its goal is the supreme absolute truth, its functions can be properly utilized when the consideration of worshipping Lord Hari gradually awakens in the mind. It automatically becomes controlled. Simply by engaging the functions of the mind in the service of the eternal object, a living entity attains auspiciousness. Therefore, in order to control the mind, one should follow the path of Yukta Vairagya rather than the Falgu Vairagya. Okay, Yukta Vairagya. So do it in a moderation, but to do it properly. keeping the goal in mind. That what are you doing? Why do you want to control your mind? Why you want to control your senses? What is the ultimate goal? Keeping that in mind. Not just to show off, not just to brag about it. Journey is long, but if we do it properly with the full understanding, we can attain the ultimate goal of our life. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much. So next week we'll start with verse number 22.